then as the DM, you're curating a specific structure to how that story will be told that's appropriate to it. So, like, to bring it back a little bit, you know, I've been in a games with DMs and they want to allow player freedom, but where they choose to, like, spend a lot of their time ends up being on details that the players don't care about story-wise. So an example being like, oh, you have this river you need to cross, you know, like, how do you cross it? And it's like, is this a detail we care about? There can't just be like a tree trunk that we can just put down and just cross. No, we have to spend half an hour describing how we makeshift an axe to cut down a tree at a 45-degree angle. Roll to see if we succeed in cutting it down. Oh, we failed, so the axe breaks. So we're gonna spend, you know, as opposed to like, what do the players care about? Like for Grey Owls, it's social interaction. They want to talk to people. So let's skip over the parts where it's like, oh, you travel. Oh, you crossed a river and you did this and that. Oh, and here's a person to talk to. Go. So like, I realize what you choose to slow down on is going to impact what story you choose. And some people come to D&D because they love that nitty gritty, how are we going to use our tools in a creative way to navigate exploration problems and kind of fight the environment in that way, right? Whereas like Grey Owls is like, no, we want to just talk to people and we want emotional arcs to our characters. The dialogue is the thing we care about, even in combat. It's the story implications of combat that matter more. So what's going to be a structure that's going to allow that part of the game to breathe and skip over the stuff that's going to bog it down?
Yeah. Even in those narrative beats, this party and all the Grey Owls groupings, even the lowest person's perception is very high. And everybody else has like passive 27, passive insight 31, and you're like, well, you know what? I'm just going to describe to you what you see. I'm going to give you the details. And then it becomes, here, let me give you the whole thing, all the stuff you probably care about. What do you want to do? Oh, I want to take a closer look at that. Is it more like this or is it more like that? Like, all right. And then we can take a closer look. But we didn't do a lot of rolling, really, when it came to a lot of those explorative beats. It was more choice-based. I want to look at this. Okay, that's what it looks like. It's doing this. Okay, I want to interact with it this way. You interact with it this way. It was difficult for a little bit of time to basically tell a player, you don't have to roll to attack that. It's a wall. You hit it. Roll damage. Oh, okay. And it's almost like it was like he wanted to roll. I want to roll, hit the thing. I'm really good at hitting the things. Like you hit it. It's a wall. go for it. And you don't want like sometimes if you roll too much, it means, well, I didn't hit the wall, even though it's a wall. That's not okay. It's go ahead, Ian.
Oh, I was just gonna say, it's those scenarios that I actually opt out of choosing a DC to have them roll for, and I just actually pick the person with the highest passive perception or something, or passive skill that's relevant, because I want to reward my players for building a certain path that specializes them to be more perceptive or more deceptive or more insightful, rather than make them roll all the time for it when I know that, this is something they would notice anyway, especially when you start getting in those higher numbers of like, plus 12, plus 13 to your insight or your perception. It's just not, why should I make them fail or risk them failing, rather crit failing, when this is such a cool narrative point? And that's actually one of the other things with Roll20 is that it makes it a lot easier to do that kind of thing. You can just whisper it to them and you say, this is what you see and only you see this. And it's up to you to use this information how you want to do it. So that was just something I noticed.
Yeah, and that's another thing with the structure of gameplay that you're signing up for is a lot of times if you ask them to roll, you're actually minimizing the meaningfulness of their decisions. Because if it's a decision that makes sense and it has a reasonable enough chance of success, why make them roll unless it's something that actually offers challenge, you know? So like if it's something like I need to balance across a beam, or like I need to tightrope across like a clothesline connecting two rooftops, yeah, you're gonna have them roll for it, you know? But if it's something like, does this person seem sketchy? Nah, you don't need to roll insight for that, unless, you know, you want to give them a clue of something very specific, you know?
Yeah.
So like, and if they roll high, but they don't quite meet the DC, there are degrees of success. And that's another thing I don't think DMs use enough. But like a lot of times, you know, a lot of players come to D&D, like my sister is one like this, where she just enjoys the random outcomes. So one of the things I tell a lot of DMs, you know, when they ask me for feedback is like, oh, am I having them roll too much? Am I having them not roll enough? And I'm like, dude, it's table by table. Like for me, I feel like if I'm going to make a narrative decision, like both of you just said, sometimes it's best not to roll and just to see what my choices outcomes are. There are other times where you get a group of players and they want more of a shenanigan-based experience. They're not there for deep storytelling or emotional arcs. They're there just to see what happens. So letting them roll to see what happens, to set off shenanigans, that can be just as exciting for them. And it honestly just takes experience. You just need to DM a lot and you get a better sense table to table of what your players are looking for, you know?
What this brings up is valuing choices over roles. And especially at this high level, there are some of their passive stats are just so dang high. And some of them are so good at the things they've chosen to specialize in that after a while, it doesn't have to be a random outcome.
Thank you so much for listening to some of our podcast highlights. This podcast is part of the Darkmoor Podcast Network. If you want to support the content creators, feel free to visit our Patreon. And please, game responsibly.